All right, let's try and decode the many implications of Trump's tariff move. We're now joined by Douglas Irwin. He is an economics professor at Dartmouth College and author of several trade books, including Clashing Over Commerce, A History of U.S. Trade Policy. Professor Irwin, thank you very much for joining us here on CNN News 18. You've been saying that Trump's reciprocal tariffs make no sense. What consequences do you fear starting the 2nd of April, and what possible scenarios do you foresee once these reciprocal tariffs come into play?
Well, I think if it was taken to an extreme, it would mean many different tariffs on many different products from many different countries, each tailored to specific countries. So it'd be endlessly complicated. It would be a major departure from most favored nation trading status under the WTO and the WTO rules that go back to the GATT after World War II. So while there may be a spot or a place for retaliation or a selective protection for certain industries under certain conditions, this wholesale revision would really lead to a disintegration of the world trading system as we see it today.
So, in simple terms, if you would explain this to our viewers, after the 2nd of April, when reciprocal tariffs come into play, imported goods are going to be more expensive for American consumers. American consumers are going to be hit hard because, the tariffs will go up in the U.S., and that means companies will pass that on to the consumer. Will that not be counterproductive?
Well, he thinks, according to his logic, that other countries are taking advantage of the U.S. Whether that's true or not, most economists sort of doubt that. But he's focusing on trade imbalances, mainly the fact that the U.S. runs a trade deficit with many, many countries. Just because the U.S. imports more than it exports to certain countries, however, doesn't mean that the U.S. is being taken advantage of, that this is a bad thing. And you're absolutely right. Imposing tariffs would raise the prices of those goods to consumers, and they would ultimately pay the price, not foreign countries. So as a way of remedying trade deficits, as a way of trying to hurt other countries, it hurts the U.S. It won't really resolve the trade imbalances issue, which require different policy tools. And therefore, I think it's largely going to be an ineffective, indeed counterproductive and possibly destructive policy.
Now, ever since Trump made reciprocal tariffs some kind of a central campaign theme, the stock markets world over, including in the United States, have been tanking. There are very real fears that the U.S. economy could be headed for recession. Trump doesn't seem to be particularly worried. What is your take? Do you see America slipping into a recession later on this year?
Right. Well, those tariffs are going to be unveiled on April 2nd, or at least we'll have a better idea of what those tariffs will entail on April 2nd. And already there are press reports in the U.S. saying that they're going to be considerably scaled back from what was initially discussed. So it may be just a certain number of countries and a select number of products are targeted. It's not going to be the wholesale revision of U.S. trade policy as maybe was suggested earlier. The Secretary of Treasury is talking about the dirty 15. The 15 countries that the U.S. has the largest trade deficits with, and I believe India is in that group. And so those countries will be targeted for special tariffs. It's not clear whether they'll be on certain products or across the board tariffs, which have also been discussed within the administration. So we'll have a better sense then, but I think markets are sort of learning that he's very serious about imposing these tariffs, even if there's an economic cost to the U.S. and the world economy. And we'll know more, and the markets may be in for some more correction on April 2nd.
So Trump has already announced 25% tariffs on the two biggest trading partners of the U.S., Mexico and Canada. He's already announced 10% tariffs in effect on Chinese goods, and China has retaliated as well. There are folks who are saying that India could actually benefit from this. India could end up sending more technology, electronics, jewelry to America, because there's going to be a knock-on effect because of what Trump has done with Mexico, Canada, and China. Do you think there is an opportunity for India here, that India can actually sort of wriggle its way around these tariffs?
I'd be cautiously optimistic. There is a scenario in which the U.S. focuses on those other countries, China, Canada, Mexico, and perhaps the EU. And because of the relationship between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, that President Trump takes a more liberal view with respect to India and doesn't attack it or want to impose tariffs, in which case you're absolutely right. Tariffs on those other trading partners will divert trade to India, just as Vietnam benefited tremendously from the tariffs imposed on China during his first term. And India would then have some great opportunities to receive more foreign investment to export to the U.S. But the danger for India would be if the trade balance, trade surplus that India enjoys with the U.S. grows larger and larger, the more likely it will be that it will be on President Trump's radar screen and he'll want to do something about it. So India has to be careful about that as well. But personal relationships matter a lot to the president, and that might buy India some good grace.
So do you think, at least in that regard, India is in a far better bargaining position than some of these other players? India's economy is the fifth largest. Do you think India has a geopolitical advantage over others? For instance, India went ahead and bought oil from Russia during the course of the war at much cheaper prices. That was a bugbear for the previous administration as well. But do you think India has a better hand that's been dealt with the deck of cards that it's been dealt with compared to China or Canada or Mexico?
Well, I think certainly there's a geostrategic or geopolitical angle to the U.S.-India relationship that the Trump administration is aware of. And so that would act in India's favor. And, India is a valued partner of the U.S. For many reasons. I wouldn't emphasize or think that the market size would matter so much. President Trump has gone after China, which is a very large market. He's gone after Canada, which is also one of America's largest trading partners, a large market right next door. So he doesn't seem to be moved by market size considerations so much. But the geopolitics, that may be an angle in which he's more sympathetic to India.
And a final question, Professor Irwin. Are you saying that, we're all looking at April 2nd as this sort of doomsday scenario for Indian trade, in fact, for global trade, but you're actually saying that India could have some very good opportunities post the 2nd of April, and therefore we can all breathe easy, for the moment at least?
Yeah, I don't think India is directly in the crosshairs of President Trump. He hasn't mentioned them nearly as much as he's mentioned Canada and Mexico and China and the EU. I would think after those countries, he'd be concerned about Japan and Korea next for their bilateral balances that the U.S. has with them. So India's not too far down the list. So that's why India has to be careful. But I think, as you've mentioned, there are a couple of factors that are working in India's favor to avoid damage.
All right. Professor Douglas Irwin from the Dartmouth College, professor of economics and a writer of many, many economics books and trade books. Thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully we'll get a chance to speak to you again post the 2nd of April once these reciprocal tariffs kick in. But Professor Irwin making the point, and a well-founded point, that India could actually find itself in an advantageous position post the 2nd of April compared to countries like China or Canada or Mexico. Trump might actually cut a better deal for India.